I know everybody is ready for lunch. We're going to make this a pretty quick rapid-fire talk, get a couple points in, and then as you're listening, think of questions, because we're going to do a short Q&A session at the end, and so we won't take too long, but we'll definitely want you guys to pry some other information out of us. So with that, we're going to kick it off.
I'm much more nervous now that I'm with a 30 under 30.
Oh, man, yeah, it's very intimidating. So I really wanted to take this time to talk about using your passion to start a company, which we'll get into in a little bit. But really quickly, let's just talk about our backgrounds so you know where this is coming from. As Heidi said, I'm the CEO of Farmlogs. We're a startup here in town. We've raised about $20 million in venture capital. We have 20% of America's farmland being managed in our software today, which is really exciting to see that ride. It's been a fun journey. But the whole thing started because I actually grew up on a farm here in Michigan and spent my summers as a kid working in our fields. Not always the most fun work to have to do, but that's where I come from. And at a very early age, I fell in love with technology and the way it was changing the world, the way computers could give us new ways to solve problems. And so started tinkering with that and learning how to build software and absolutely loved that. So I started a company with some friends, and we're going to hear a little bit about that in a minute, and then eventually followed my passion into starting Farmlogs.
So Jesse made these slides for me, so I'm just going to quickly read off them. Similarly, I actually grew up on a farm as well, but I grew up in a farm in Pakistan. Came to the U.S. in the late 80s when I was in elementary school. Grew up in the area, actually, Detroit suburb, Sterling Heights High School. And then, long story short, built a couple of companies. The second company was acquired by Google. And then I became a partner at YC. I think most people know what YC is. Does anybody not know what Y Combinator is? Some people don't. Okay. If you ever heard of like accelerators or incubators, that was kind of the first incarnation of that. Started in 2005. We invest a small amount of money into a large number of companies. Our last batch was 130 companies, so we're really getting hit in volume now. Farmlogs is a YC company. We tend to be the first check in companies. So, and companies that you've probably heard of that we've done, that we funded, that we were first checks in, are Reddit, Dropbox, Airbnb, Stripe, Heroku, Docker, Mixpanel, DoorDash. I mean, there's about 45 companies that are worth over $100 million now that we were first investors in, 10 which are worth over $1 billion, and 2 which are worth over $10 billion. So good seed fund. And I'm a partner there, so I pick and advise companies. Yeah, that's me.
Cool. Cribspot and Olark, I think, are also YC companies here in town, if any of you guys have heard of them.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about passion. And the reason is because a lot of my life has been really following my own passion. And that's really been my whole experience in building companies. And I'm going to take the time to tell 2 stories, because I've started 2 companies. And so we'll just dive right in. The first one is a story of passion plus jealousy. So I mentioned I was really passionate about technology, and I ended up getting to go to this really cool school program where it was a computers class, but my friends and I were all hanging out, learning about how we could use software to build really neat things. And one day I was sitting there working on something. I was learning something. I was the kind of kid that I was so passionate about tech that when we'd go on vacation, like a family vacation up north or something, instead of doing whatever everyone else was doing, I'd bring a manual with me on some new technology and read the thing cover to cover, and that was just exciting to me. So I'm sitting in this class and studying something probably around computer networking at the time, and I look over and my friend is designing a logo. And I started to get a little jealous. I'm like, wait a second, what is this logo for? And turns out he was thinking of starting a little company to do tech consulting work. And I ended up being really jealous of that. And I said, okay, well, I'm super passionate about technology. You're super passionate about technology. Why don't we start a company together? And that's how our first company was born. And it turned out that it actually was a fairly successful company. We grew it for about 5 years, and we got to work on some really interesting tech. and explore a lot of things. And financially, it was okay. It wasn't ever going to make a huge impact on the world, but it was an okay journey. And then, what that really afforded me was the opportunity to work on the cutting edge of one domain, technology, and still see how the roots that I came from, agriculture, what was the cutting edge there? And I think that's where a lot of really interesting ideas come from, and where you can come up with ideas to change the world, is when you actually are working on the intersection of two domains where you're on the forefront of each domain. So in software, the internet was changing the world and the way we deliver software. And then in farming, I was still able to see what was cutting edge, and it wasn't enough. And that led me to the second journey, which was starting Farmlogs. So the difference this time around was that I found a chance to combine the passion that I had for technology and the passion I have for farming, which is the thing that my brother and my dad and my uncle and everybody I knew that I grew up around work in, with a real opportunity to go create a business. And this is kind of lesson number one, is that the effect of that is that Farmlogs has the opportunity to go make a huge impact on the world in a way that that first company didn't really have, because it was just born out of combining my passion for technology with just being jealous of my buddy that was working on a cool logo. And so the chance to actually look at how farmers were making such an important impact on every single one of us, and yet nobody in the technology world was actually solving any of their problems, really struck a chord with me, and is something that even today is incredibly important. I get up every single day knowing that I get to do exactly what I want to be doing with my life and connect with that. So those are two different stories of starting companies. We'll dive into some of the how passion connects with things. But I want to give Qasar a chance to
Yeah,
talk.
I think one of the advantages that we have at YC is we see a huge volume of companies. A normal batch, we're looking at 7,000 companies, out of which we fund a small slice of that. And my two companies that I founded, one was a consumer company, one was a B2B company. I won't go into them because it's kind of ancient history now. I'm so old that it's it's not as insightful. But the kind of driving forces for both of them are pretty common. They weren't jealousy and they weren't opportunity. It was slightly different. It was, one, I didn't want to ever work for people. It's something that I've personally had a deep belief in since I was probably as old as I could be to think about working for somebody. And I think if you break that emotion apart, why don't I want to work with people? It was work for people. It was probably a subset of the ego and thinking that I have a perspective that is different and mine is more correct than the people that I work for. Freedom and ultimately economic gain, some version of those things. But that theme of having this underlying emotion, for this conversation, we're calling it passion, is a pretty important one. And so when we look at companies, these thousands and thousands of companies, you have to have the ability when you're sitting across the table to see, why does this person care about this business? And I think couple of reasons Jesse's already highlighted are common reasons. What happened with me is another common reason, but it's very important to recognize what is, for you, if you're starting something, what is that driving force? Because if it's the more legitimate that driving force is, the more likely you'll be successful, and the more kind of illegitimate it is, the less likely to be successful. Now, the reason I say it's less, and I use these very general terms, is because I was talking with Jesse about this. In almost every example, we can come up with exceptions to the rule. There are definitely people who are starting companies in very boring industries that don't have an underlying emotion for, and they end up becoming huge, very successful businesses. So it's not a binary outcome, but this is generally true.
Yeah, and I think the key thing here is that, and how does this work for you if you're thinking about starting a company, is that starting a company is really, really hard at times. And there'll be moments of excitement and things that are a lot of fun, but at the end of the day, there's going to be really tough things that you're going to have to face. And if you're working on something that you're not passionate about, how likely is it that you're going to keep going? And so I know at Combinator, one of the big things you guys are looking for is relentlessly resourceful people that just don't give up, and they're going to find a way around whatever problem is getting in the way of them building a successful company. And so for me, the big takeaway, the personal lesson that I have is that even when sometimes things are tough and you're dealing with something that just really sucks, and you're thinking, why am I even bothering to put myself through this? If you can connect it back to the thing that you were super passionate about in the first place, that's going to go a long way. So when you're thinking about how does passion matter for me, I would encourage you to really think about if you truly are passionate about the thing you're going to do and how valuable that can be in thinking about starting a company.
And so there's passion and there's emotion with yourself. There's a kind of a second driving force for me was the people that I work with. And I think both first and the second company, the driving force was I actually enjoyed really the people that I was with every day. And I think with Jesse's talking about these real emotional roller coaster of starting a company or starting really anything, having the ability to be with people and then motivate those folks as well is an important driving force in continuing when things are not going well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you're working on starting a business, chances are you're going to need to get other people involved, right? You're probably going to need to hire people and get employees. You may want to go convince people to invest in your company to fuel the growth of the business. And so, and again, in my own personal experience, my passion has shown through in a way that really is contagious. And it gets people so excited about what we're doing because I'm so excited about it. It makes you want to believe in what you're doing. We believe that at Farmlogs, we're going to go create a better future for farming. And that's something that is really important in the world. And I get so excited about that. I get chills like thinking about how awesome that's going to be to be able to completely reshape an entire industry that every single person on the planet has to rely on. And so
I do not get those chills from farming.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm happy we left that. That was very manual.
Intersection, though. It's the intersection, right? So technology and farming together. And it turns out there's all this incredible science behind agriculture that data science can actually help us apply new techniques into farming. I mean, we're literally programming people's fields. We can take data about their field from satellites. We can study it. We can translate that into how much seed do you need in this exact spot in the field, and then program the machine to do that, wirelessly beam that recommendation into the equipment. I mean, as a hacker, like that's awesome, and I think it's something that can have a profound effect on every one of us. And so having passion about something like that is what's going to help you get other people involved too. It can really open doors for you, but it's not enough. So.
Yes, I would love to say there was something simple as like this, if you can elicit one emotion, therefore you will have a successful business, but this is not the case. The market demands a certain service or a certain product, when that's if you're a small restaurant, if you're a musician, if you're trying to build a technology company, and you have to be able to fulfill, or you have to be able to provide a service that is, fulfills some demand. And so it's necessary, passion is necessary, but it's not sufficient for success.
Yeah. So going back to the story of Farmlogs, in this case, we had the ability to take something I was super passionate about as a founder that I want to spend my life working on and combine it with a real business opportunity. And so if you're thinking about starting a company, I'd encourage you to look at what domains are you able to look at on the cutting edge and find opportunity that you're really passionate about. So you have to take both these things and combine them. It's not just passion that's going to help you start a great company. It's really important, and you can leverage that day in and day out to drive your work and to figure out what's going to keep you pushing forward. But you should also look for real windows of opportunity to innovate and to create value in the world as well. And it's not enough to just have passion.
Yeah, and I think there's another very important point here is I think I see a lot of founders almost kind of being dishonest to themselves about why they're doing whatever they're trying to do. And so kind of having an honest, if you're trying to do a business just to make money, that's fine. We live in a capitalist environment. That's okay. You don't need to lie. The reason I say that is if you're building your whatever, your band, your restaurant, whatever, on a set of incorrect assumptions, that will ultimately create real problems in the company. So really having a clear understanding of what is actually driving your motivation to do X, Y, or Z is very important.
Cool. Okay, so a couple quick takeaways. Number one, try to align your passion with real business opportunities if you're thinking about starting a company. Number two, tap into your passion to inspire other people. Inspire people to come join you on the mission of your company, and really leverage your passion in that way. And then number three is use your passion to push through the tough times. If you truly did find something to spend your time working on that you're passionate about, you can tap into that and use it to build a sustainable business for the long haul.
Cool. So now we're going to do Q&A. Jesse said this is right before lunch, so nobody wants to probably ask questions. So try to prove him wrong. And we'll just repeat your question because we don't have any mics.
Cost is cut down dramatically by relying upon satellite imagery by using drone technology to track the growth of crops. And are you involved in using that technology?
Are you using drones in Farmlogs or using imagery in Farmlogs to cut down cost?
Yeah, drones are kind of cool. They are actually merely toys on farms today. And the reason being is that your premise was that the cost is lower is actually false. So it takes a lot more human labor to actually operate a drone in today's conditions. So we don't have autonomous vehicles that can fly without a pilot. You actually still have to pilot the things, and they'll do most of the work for you, but you have to go to the field. And when you look at the vast amount of land that we're imaging for farms, we have over 275 million acres of row crop land in the United States, and to image that with drones is really labor intensive today. And so we're actually capable of doing that at super high resolution with satellite images that are covering vast amounts of area. So the cost of satellites is actually coming down dramatically as well. You can now put satellites in space for a lot cheaper than it used to be, and people have started iterating and getting really creative with how to design satellites. Those little CubeSats, they're about this big.
We funded multiple companies doing this. Yeah,
exactly. So I would encourage you to go to our blog and read about all the reasons why drones are not yet as useful as satellites in agriculture.
Cool.
So why Ann Arbor, and how has being here helped you grow your business?
Why Ann Arbor, and how has it being here helped grow your business?
Cool, good question. So when we started Farmlogs, we decided to move out to Silicon Valley because that's where startups are born. And mind you, I didn't grow up here in Ann Arbor, so grew up in the thumb of Michigan, 2 hours north of here, and had no idea that there was a technology world and all the cool things about Ann Arbor that exist here. No clue. So we moved out to Mountain View, California, and I think that's a really wonderful place. There's a lot of really special things about Silicon Valley. Great place to build a company. For us, what we found was that, well, it really is simply like every time we wanted to see a customer, we'd have to get on a plane to go back to the Midwest where we were from. And that seemed a little crazy. And so we just scanned the Midwest and really started looking for where is the most likely place for us to build a successful company in the Midwest that still had close proximity to our customers. And Ann Arbor won. So there's a lot of great things that Ann Arbor has to provide. We were blown away with the other tech startups that were already here. And so I think one of the big draws was University of Michigan. You need really talented people. If you're going to build a successful company, you have to be able to hire the resources that University of Michigan can provide in terms of all the people coming into Ann Arbor every single year. That's incredible. And we wanted to be able to tap into that.
Cool. Last question.
So you kind of covered this, talked about this a bit, but so you talked about opportunity being where you can be at the cutting edge of a domain, opens up a door where you maybe know or have insight about that. And I've also heard the question with startups before, you need to know what your advantage is over someone else. Why you do this? And so maybe this is a question more for Qasar with more companies. But what if you don't have the necessarily most insight into something? When is it still worth it to do it? You're not the expert, but you should still try because X.
Most companies, I shouldn't say most, probably I think it's the HBR study was something like 70% of companies are started by people who have some domain expertise. But a lot of very, very large and successful companies have not been started by people who know anything about the space. And one of the main reasons experts tend to be wrong is their expertise lies within reality, which just won't exist in the future. And so I definitely don't, I wouldn't let that intimidate or overwhelm you. I mean, you take companies like Cruise, which YC company that General Motors just bought 2 years old for a $1.2 billion. I mean, I met Kyle and Daniel when they were starting Cruise, and they didn't know anything about self-driving cars. And that was 2 years ago. And I think, I've worked at General Motors for 5 years. I worked at Bosch for 2 years. I had a bunch of engineering experience. So, and even then I thought, no, these guys can learn. Because the stuff that you're working on is just, the actual truth is nothing's that complicated. I think if you really put time into it, nothing is that complicated. And from any industry, even the kind of the most sophisticated industries, I would say really 3 to 6 months of aggressive, effort can probably make up the vast majority of ground. That sounds almost crazy, but it's true, because what most people in the industries know is just irrelevant. Like being a good engineer at General Motors, being a good employee at General Motors does not actually make you a better founder of a self-driving car company. The only thing that matters in being a founder of a self-driving car company is making a self-driving car. Everything else doesn't matter. And so how many people in General Motors are working on that? Not many. And the people who are working on it, if you actually look at their time, it's probably, I would venture to say, aggressively, maybe 5 hours a week of actual work. The rest is just managing being an employee and showing up to work and eating lunch and managing your promotions and all this other random nonsense, which actually is not contributing to learning something about a specific skill set or honing a specific skill set. So I wouldn't worry about it at all. Go do whatever space you're interested in, work on it. And even then, like you talk about like Farmlogs, even if the space seems very narrow and deep, that's fine. There are huge companies in seemingly obscure parts of the market. So so really just if whatever you're interested in, work on that, and then try to learn enough to say, okay, this is what we understand, which is different than what the market understands, and we're going to provide a new service, and therefore get return.
Cool.
Cool. We're going to be here around for lunch and stuff like that, so you can always ask us. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.